Quick video. You have a child watching a Disney movie, and then you have an adult watching the Disney movie with the child, and the adult's going to get the humor that's found within the Disney movie. Adults are going to get the adult jokes that are put in there. The kids are going to see things in a completely different light. The parent might see what the child's laughing at as a very childish thing to laugh at. The adults are going to laugh at different things. I remember this when I was younger. I saw this friend of mine who had a daughter, and they were watching Shrek, and there's a scene where Lord Farquaad is masturbating, underneath the sheets, and the kids don't get that, but that joke is there. Parents get it. They understand what he's doing. He's mirror. He's like seeing in the mirror, and he's masturbating. He's pleasing himself. And parents get that, but kids wouldn't, unless they're older. Unless they experience that thing. That's a huge part that says about experience. How we experience something is different for each, the child to the adult. It's the same movie, but the child's experiencing it different than the adult. So apply this now to religion and spirituality. You have people that make Molotov cocktails, that go and firebomb stuff and kill people, and that's their experience of something. But then you have people that go feed the homeless, that help the homeless, that help other people that are in need, the so-called Good Samaritans, and that's another way of interpreting it. I think that if you think of like Christ consciousness, or if somebody might say goddess consciousness, I'm just using the Christian narrative because I live in a Christian nation, United States of America. But I think it's like 85-86% of the world is religious or spiritual. So we live in a world that is religious or spiritual, and those belief structures from thousands of years ago are still relevant nowadays. It's just as we evolve more, we're going to evolve our relationship to those things more. It's just like, think of a car. A car, in the past, we didn't stop evolving the car because the car is a machine. It's easy to evolve. It's like, I don't think it's called Moore's Law. Don't quote me on this. There's a thing, if you look it up, it's like, I misinterpreted this the other day. I was calling it Moore's Law, like how technology doubles in processing capacity every other year. Well, think about that with consciousness. If you have a practice that's thousands of years old, or religions or spiritual practice in relation to consciousness, it's going to evolve very slowly, it's going to be understood better throughout the years. So you see how that works? So for somebody to sit there and say something that's old and it's outdated doesn't make any sense. It's not logical or rational. When you take something like religion and spiritual practice and you utilize it, I was told once, or I read once, this Wiccan thing, that to be truly spiritual or religious, you have to have logic and rationale within your practice. So anyway, with the movie, let me go back to that first. It makes sense, what I'm getting at is it makes sense that we would look at religion or spirituality in a different light as we evolved. You see how that works? We would evolve better states of understanding of stuff as time went on, and then that would evolve the thing to the point, basically, where you get to the point where you're almost taking the Christ figure out of the Bible, and you see a lot of the other stuff is just the historicity, but a lot of the history of stuff can actually blind you, and that's why we have people fighting over scraps of land still nowadays. I think that's relative for nowadays, especially when you look at some of the stuff that goes on. It's like they're missing the point. They're killing people for the temple rather than realizing the temple's already within. That's a whole other story. So you sit there and you think of the Disney movie. The kids are the uneducated in relation to, let's say, the religious practice. The kids are laughing at a different part, the more immature stuff. They're throwing rocks. They're throwing Molotov cocktails. They're being, violent to each other. They're not adults that are viewing it in this different light. They don't get the metaphor, the allegory, the certain things in that, how we relate to certain things in that metaphorical, allegorical sense. They're still thinking like children. And there's nothing wrong with, there's that, this song's like "Speak with wisdom like a child, directly from the heart." We see certain things in certain spiritual, religious contexts where people say, be like a child with how you relate to stuff. What that means is an innocence with a will to understand stuff better. That, that to be curious about stuff, to learn. You want to seek out stuff, you want to learn, you want to be curious. You just don't want to be this adult where everything's rational and like hard-lined, hard-nosed towards stuff, and you just give up on stuff. So you see what I'm saying? It's like you really want to look at stuff from the right light and then ask yourself, what experiences have you had that help define the way that you define something? If you haven't really experienced something in a very good light, then it's like, your experience is very, you've only experienced 3 people that were religious or spiritual in a certain sense, then how can you say you know anything about it? It's a very limited view of something. So what I'm getting at here is that it seems like the people that are misusing spiritual religious practice or things associated with that are the ones that are like the child watching the movie, like watching Shrek or whatever. They don't get the jokes. They don't get the metaphors, the allegories, and things like that. The adults are the ones that that understand there's metaphors or allegory. Like think of Jesus walking on water. That's a good metaphor just for trusting people that, you basically have to trust your friends. You're drowning in an ocean, you're drowning in the sea, you're drowning in water. You have to trust your friends to be there to help pull you out of that drowning situation to get you back in the boat. I think some people take it very literally, and that's where you have wars, violence, things of that nature. And I mean, I get it. Like, people invest their time. I'm not saying I condone violence. I'm not an atheist or a theist. For me, it seems like a lot of atheism can be proven, of course. I mean, Darwinian evolution. But then a lot of religious spiritual practice can be proven too, when we start looking at things like psychology and psychiatry to kind of help understand those things. Also, when we look at neuroscience, it's been proving, a lot of what Buddhism has been saying for a very long time. A lot of neuroscience is proving that. So you start thinking about that, it's a very fascinating thing to think about. And if you have hard evidence to prove something, I think it's how you look at the thing which helps prove something. So I'm not saying that all religion or spiritual practice is true. I'm saying it's how we relate to it that makes it true to the individual. So you have to be careful with that. You have to be mature enough to understand, what you're getting into and how to relate to it, and then be mature enough to take your personal opinion, your personal belief of something, and make it so it's not abusive to others, relevant for the current age, and just good overall, that you can actually teach others what you're into. If you can't teach something, then you shouldn't be giving it up. Because what I mean by that is somebody says, "Oh, evolve beyond your religion. You don't need it. Everyone's this sheep, this follower." But then you're asking yourself, ask those people, who told you that? Like, who told you to give something? Where did you get this idea in your head? Because then what are you doing? You're following somebody's lead. You're basically following somebody that's telling you people are sheep for believing something. So see how that works? That's tribalism. That's the issue with tribalism nowadays. And with a lot of things, if people say something's good, a fad diet, workout regime, just something in general, you should trust somebody because they said this or did this, or because they, drew this amazing thing, and, you should trust somebody because there's something they drew that, really doesn't show anything about the person. It's like in psychology where somebody draws art, and it's like, the art shows somebody happy, but the person's cutting themselves with razor blades, and they're doing all these things. We're not these images in our mind. We're not these images that we often portray to other people. There's depth to people. We really have to search for it. So anyway, it's just a thought. I don't think that religion or spiritual practice is bad. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's evolving. 85 to 86% of the whole planet is religious or spiritual. I think the majority of that is Christian, and then Islam is going to surpass that here soon. Don't quote me on that, but it's just a fascinating thing. Again, I don't identify as any one thing in my search for understanding of conscious experience on planet Earth. But I find it interesting to not give up on certain things that a lot of people find it easy to give up on. Because they're basically giving up on stuff because they're being, cool or something. Like, they think it makes them cool. Like, they're part of some modern trend, some modern crowd. It makes them edgy to give certain things up and kind of turn their back on something. And it just really, when you ask people, so I'm not against those people. What I'm getting at is when you ask those people why they're doing something, they never really give you an answer. So what I'm getting is, if you could take a car, you don't have to be a mechanic or a race car driver to drive a car. If the car still serves a purpose with how you're going to use it, then it shouldn't be scrapped. So anyway, it's just a thought.